Yes, this is terrible. Hello, hello, everybody. Good evening. It is Friday. It is the Gin and Tonic Show. It's the 15th of May, and we're talking about Islam. I just have to. I feel so sorry for poor Rob because he's trying to join, and he's got some technical issue, and he can't get the microphone working. And it's so funny watching the frantic attempts at getting on here. So it's so funny. I'm sorry that I'm laughing about this. It's not actually funny, Rob. I know I know exactly the feeling when you're trying to do something. You know you should have it working. Everything works fine normally, and now it doesn't. I know the feeling. Oh goodness. Hello everybody. Oh, hang on. Let me see if I need to activate him. If he's a guest.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
One,
Can
two,
you
three.
say something now?
1 2 1 2. Can you hear me? Hello?
No, still not. Oh dear. Okay, we'll have to see how that works.
1 2 1 2
Welcome
1 2.
everybody to the Gin and Tonic Show. Welcome. It's a Friday. Welcome to the panel, which is non-existent tonight. Now, poor Thunderous is under the weather. I don't know what he has. He just said he can't. He just needs to take a time out. So he's not going to be joining us by the looks of it. He just needs to take a break. And Rob, as you can see, is struggling. So I'm just going to open up in the normal way, welcoming everybody in the chat, welcoming everybody who is watching. Just to tell you what this is, it's the Gin and Tonic Show. Jinn as in the mystical creatures or mythical creatures that the Quran provides us with, which says that humans and jinn were created only for one purpose, and that is to worship the Creator. Now, this is a live show, and you have three ways of participating. You can either come and join us on the show on Facebook or on YouTube. You can then type comments, either chat to us or to other people, or you can join us on the panel. If you want to interact with us on a one-on-one basis, you're welcome to do so. Remember, this is a free speech zone, so we welcome people who can comment, correct, question, whatever. So we're not in any way into censorship, and we will not take the mic away from you unless you become abusive. Now, we do not normally address other ideologies, be it Christianity, Hinduism, Sikhism, whatever. So we try and stick to Islam, and we try and let the Quran speak for itself. So we're not into having scholars go mad at each other, or the various hadiths mad at each other, because then you just get a huge big mess. So we try and focus on Islam, we try and focus on the Quran. We address, we critique, we are critical towards bad ideas of and in the ideology, but we don't attack, and we don't attack individual Muslims. If somebody's obnoxious, stupid, arrogant, narcissistic, or whatever, sure, then I'll take him down a notch. But other than that, I'm very open to learn something from other people, and I've done so. And I learn every single week. All the time there are things that I'm still updating in my brain. Now, I just try and be decent, okay? That sometimes I'm abrasive, okay, that's a different story. Now, don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal, it's for free. This is just from the bottom of our hearts. This is my altruistic streak where I am, and I think maybe I should explain this. It's like, you're a car mechanic, you know cars, and you are standing next to a car which you would actually like to buy for very cheap because it's very broken. And you know the brakes are shot. You know that the gearbox is just being held up by some wires, and you know that half the exhaust is gone. So being an expert, you know these things. And now suddenly you have an elderly lady who's coming to, she just wants to get around. She just needs transport. And the guy tells her how wonderful this car is, and how much she will be saving if she only gives him like 8,000 euro, pounds, dollars, or whatever. And you're standing next to them, and you know this is not worth more than 300. Do you keep quiet? Do you keep this to yourself and let this poor lady get screwed over by an unscrupulous sales guy? Well, I'm sorry, I don't. I will open my mouth and I will say, lady, I strongly advise you to go and have this car checked by somebody else to get a second opinion by somebody who's not involved in this whole transaction. That's what I would do because I see this as my duty, so to speak, to inform others if I have the information that somebody else does not have. And the same thing is true here because I think by now I know more about Islam and more about the Quran than 99% of all Muslims because they don't know much about Islam. They have never read the Quran. And this is why we are here opening our mouths, telling people about this. Okay, so I hope this was clear. The way that we do it is we have a structure where we talk about different segments, which is normally just a bit of the news. Then we go and look at some sentences of the Quran to see if we understand them, and if anybody has any questions or something, we can answer those. And then we have a theme of the month, and this month it's Quran versus reality. And today we're going to be talking about non-believers. And then we're going to go and see if we can get some interaction with the chats, have people talk to us, answer questions, go into a topic or whatever that has not been covered, and then end with the hadith of the week. And if this is not Islam for you, we are then going to go for a chat, which is not recorded, by the way, on a Discord server where you will get the link towards the end of the show. And it's in the description as well. So, because this doesn't change, unfortunately, access to this show does change. I don't know, is it fortunate or unfortunate? I don't know. Anyway, welcome, Rob. Are
Hello,
you
good
now
evening. Can
able
you
to
hear me now?
communicate with us?
Are you able to hear me now? Hello?
Still not. Or
Can
is
you
it
hear
me?
me? You might need to rejoin. Can anybody
I
else
just
hear me? Give
realized
me a
that my
thumbs up. And
headphones are connected to the
let's just see
wrong audio.
if you can hear me. Hopefully you
So
can.
let me quickly fix that. Now I should be able to hear you.
Yeah, I can. I'm listening on a
Yeah.
different phone here. I'm coming through to
Okay.
everybody else.
Yes, you're coming through now.
Thank
Great
you.
stuff.
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay, there we go. Yeah, sorry
Super.
about that. Last
No
minute
problem.
something with a client. Just before we start as well, for those who don't know, obviously, as Stops said, we critique Islam, the ideology. And yesterday, I believe, somebody that certainly I've met at Speaker's Corner, I didn't know him very well, a Muslim gentleman passed away. His name is Isa from Pony, Frimpony, I think it is. So he passed away in the evening one night. I think it was yesterday evening or the day before, but certainly in the last 2 days, if not before. And so he was a good representative of Islam. We always say, many Muslims are better than their book. And he, from the brief interactions I've had and the other people that have spoken to send their condolences, he seemed like a good man. So from us, or at least for me, and I know Stops didn't know him, but condolences to the family. We can only hope that they deal with it as best they can. And as I say, as a representative, then he certainly took the better parts of the Quran and seemed to be a decent representative. So even for us who are critics of Islam, we can acknowledge and send condolences to other people. And again, I did say as well that not everybody would have that. And like I say, from what I've heard, he was a good man. He was a quiet and decent interlocutor. And that can't be said for everybody. So, sending condolences and best wishes to his family and friends. With that,
Thank you for that. Yes.
on with the show.
Before we start, I want to quickly go because we were talking about Thunderous and his health at the moment. There were a lot of comments last week about our brief interaction that we had.
Sorry, Stops. I missed it at the beginning. Then did you sort of say that he's ill this week?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we're wishing him a speedy recovery, obviously.
Yes.
Sorry, I missed that first few seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But I see on the show last week, and this time I did open it, but I don't want. I can't summarize it. I just want to quickly run through this because this is important. Okay, so Vaid corrected me and said that the the bill in India, because remember, I was talking about the immigration and whatever, that some people like Muslims are excluded. And it does not affect the rights of any citizen in India. Its purpose is to fast track the naturalization of illegal immigrants who are in India because of religious persecution. And this only goes for the citizens of Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan. In other words, those persecuted by Islamic laws and fundamentalism. It covers persons of all religions except Muslims because it treats with persons who are persecuted because of Islam. So, to go and speed up the nationalization of people who are persecuted because of Islam and then to speed up the fast track of Muslims doesn't really make sense. So thank you for the clarification. So now I understand some of the stuff. I mean, for me, the Indian, let's say, problem is so huge that the mind boggles. I don't even try and understand it. Now, Scarlet Fox is a good question. Is Thunders able to critically analyze the Bible in the same way he can critically analyze the Quran? Now, obviously not. But this is... Oh, shit, here goes my stupid... I've set it for as long as I possibly can. But this is 16 minutes, and then it will change to the next picture. Now, obviously not. But this is not the point. The thing is that I value Thunder for his contribution, for his mind, for what he can contribute when it comes to Islam, because we are critiquing Islam. Now, if somebody wants to believe in some God, it doesn't matter whether it's the God of the Bible, of the Quran, of the Bhagavad Gita, of the whatever the case may be, it doesn't really matter as long as it doesn't affect other people. And this is exactly the case for Thunderous. This is why I don't have a reason to go and criticize him. I have no reason to go and confront him. I have no reason to do any of that. It's just that it seems that I overstepped some line or other. I don't know what it was. But there is no reason to be sensitive about this at the moment. I knew all along that Thunderous did believe in some sort of creator. And that's fine by me because it doesn't affect anything. It doesn't do anything. It's just that yes, there is something in his brain that makes him want to believe that there is some sort of a superhuman being out there. But I'm not going to go into a war about this. I don't really care. And again, Vai says, The God Virus is an excellent book, so you must have read it. It's just an analogy. Exactly, and that's exactly what it is. Which in a way brainwashes their adherents with the mind virus, and that's exactly what happens. And Thunderous, don't take it personal. It's not good for the show. Exactly. Thank you. And that's exactly what I'm trying to bring across. I'm not criticizing Thunder. I am not. But I cannot switch off, my rational thinking, my logical thinking, my critical thinking. So, and after all, you condemn Islam for all the barbaric ideology whilst clinging to Christianity. I don't think he actually clings to Christianity. I think for him, this is more the abstract idea of a supernatural creator, which is there. He has a lot of knowledge, and this is why I cherish his contributions here so much, because he also has a lot of knowledge about the Bible, the Jewish part and the Christian part, and which created the concept of hell, propagates slavery, misogynistic, species of flat earth, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. Yeah. And this is the problem. But the thing is, I don't care about that. When, I'm thinking about the Bible, I don't really concentrate on these things. And this is what I'm saying. We are focusing on Islam. And this is where Most Epic says, an Abrahamic religion is a religion whose followers believe in the prophet Abraham and his sons and grandsons to hold an important role in human spiritual development. Exactly. And the best known Abrahamic religion is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Exactly. Thank you for that. And then he goes into some smaller areas, which absolutely yes. So, and this is a very important point to make. They are monotheistic. So even though a lot of Muslims are claiming that Christianity is not monotheistic, but is pagan in nature, no. The concept of the Trinity has never been that there are three gods or something. You have the Godhead and that's it. So. And Tom Edwards, thank you very much for this. And I second this. Thunderous, you're an excellent contributor and you have emphatic knowledge of Islam. And your analysis is excellent and you tear Islam apart. Your reaction when Stoff was talking about the God virus was very typical of a religious bloke. You got aggressive and felt like a victim. And this is so true. And he carries on, you destroy Islam with great intellect and see Allah as an unreasonable, angry God. And then I'm not going to read the rest. And you should really read the God virus. Yeah, of course. And thinking clearly, of course. I mean, these are um, the poet amongst us. I think the argument was inevitable, given that it's watched by atheists and will occasionally go into more general critique of religions. And unfortunately, that is the case. But I wasn't criticizing Thunderous personally. Okay, I cannot stress that enough. However, I hope it doesn't put Thunderous off. And this is exactly the point. As his contributions are good for the show, he's the only ex-Muslim on the panel and therefore has a different perspective on Islam, which is valuable. Exactly. And this is exactly what we all feel about this. This is why I actually feel terrible about this. But I did not intend this. This is me, just from the top of my head saying things which, okay, I think Thunderous should be thick-skinned enough, knowing me enough by now, that I don't criticize him personally, and I think that's it. And then Kim is saying the obvious thing, that people are congregating even though we have a different era, a different time, and we shouldn't be doing that unless we really know what we're doing. All right. So I hope that puts it out of the way, and I hope this is not something that Thunderous will hold against me, and that he does not bear a grudge just because I said something about the God virus. And that, yes, there is a virus in the brain of anybody who does actually believe in the supernatural creator. But this is just an analogy. It is not personal. It is not putting anyone down who has this. It's just there. So what the hell? All right. Rob, do you think I've made this very clear? Because there's nothing really to say about this, is there?
Yeah, look, I definitely think you've made it clear. I suppose from Thunder's point of view, having digs at what he sees as him being part of him, yeah, you could always say, hey, you can get over it. He shouldn't worry it. I suppose if one put it on the other foot, and like it was you and I with two Christians, and then we were critiquing Islam, and show after show they would say, I'm not saying we did that all the time, but every show they would go, yeah, these non-believers, they've got no morals, or they don't have a basis for morals, or whatever the digs were. I think it would be, you could bypass it, or whatever the case is. At some point, you're going to go, okay, well, obviously I'm included in that group there, and I think maybe that's the perspective he's taking with that sort of thing. I'm trying to be quite careful. So when I'm critiquing, in my mind, I'm critiquing the Islamic God and certain Muslims that follow it, and others that don't. So, yeah, I mean, you could see it both ways. I suppose the other thing that maybe, and you and I talked about this anyway, is just to focus our minds on the Islamic God, because even though some of that might apply to other God believers, I think if we focus on the Islamic God and we actually say it like that, that also means that all our focus is going there. And if somebody then wants to take it and go, okay, well, that also applies to me, that's their own thing. I think if one does say it more broadly, then, as much as somebody would, or maybe you could argue, shouldn't take it personally, I think that's always a possibility. And I think, because we have that difference between you and I and Thunderous, I think more general comments can be taken as a swipe, which, like you say, perhaps he shouldn't take as a swipe. But I think if we reverse the roles, then it could be the case that we would eventually get to the point where we go, okay, there's a swipe being taken here. Whereas if we focus on Islam and we call it Islam or Allah or whatever the case is, then it's less likely for that to happen. But again, that's just a different perspective. Everybody's going to do it in their own way. So maybe I'm too charitable, too generous. I don't know.
And I'm just too brutally honest. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, if Thunderous, in case you're listening, if I have in any way come too close, or in any way, offend, of course I've offended you. Of course I have. But it's not intentional, man. Come on. It's not something that you should take too serious, and you should know me well enough that I don't mean this personally. All right? So there's it. Okay. let's get on with the news. But thank you guys that you've also clarified this really, and I really appreciate from everybody who commented on this, who picked it up, and this is very nice of you that you notice these things and you say and you tell Thunder as well that he's a good contributor, valuable and really a benefit for the show. And it's a pity that at the moment we have a little bit of an atmosphere which I don't really want. Okay, let's go to the news. There has been a retraction by Al Jazeera because they had a report on Denmark's female imam. Now, she's been running around since I think 2016, if I remember correctly. And she said we challenged the structure, and this girl Shirin Khankan, whatever, opened the Women's Mariam Mosque in Copenhagen in Denmark. And the Mariam Mosque in Copenhagen advocates for women's rights to be an imam. And it allows interfaith marriages and supports the right to divorce, to challenge patriarchal structures within religious institutions. The funny thing is that Al Jazeera reported on this and they have retracted their entire comment, their entire reporting. And this for me is very strange that Al Jazeera will retract something and will not update this, will not put it back, will not do anything. This is for me like really, really weird. Another item, and I'll put this in here, the OIC, I don't know if you remember, the OIC is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or this, the C stands for a lot of things. And it's a group consisting of 56, well, plus a half, like this little Palestine or whatever. Organization which brings all these people together. They issued the Declaration of Human Rights for Islam in Cairo in 1990. So this is the organization that is like the megaphone of Islam. And they said they welcome the decision, and I did a yay decision of the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, KSA, to introduce reforms in the country's penal code by abolishing floggings and capital punishments. Yeah, except it's only for kids. So it's a pity. They really could have gone and changed something. They really could have gone and made a difference, but they didn't. They decided to just go and make a minor adjustment so that minors no longer are publicly flogged and decapitated. Everybody else still gets flogged, still you have public decapitations. Come on. Really? Is this what a country should be doing in the 21st century based on the code of Sharia?
See, if they were an island country somewhere else, or they weren't important to other countries either for oil or other strategic value, they'd be ostracized, right? The only reason that people sort of pretend to have some sort of interaction with these people is because they want something from them. If there was nothing of value that they could offer and they didn't have that strategic place in the Middle East, they would be quite rightly ousted as an outlier and a backward barbaric society. And again, this is not all Saudis, by the way, of course. There's some progressive people, there's atheists there. I met somebody at Speaker's Corner. He said, you can't believe how many young people are either not Muslim or throwing off the Muslim thing. This sort of repressive government just won't work a long period of time. But the government is repressive and backward, and they should be called out. But again, politics is more complex than I think people realize. And I watched a series called Madam Secretary, which is obviously a dramatized version of what happens, how people, countries wheel and deal and try to get something, because you can be hard-assed about everything, but unless you go to war, that's not always going to work. So you got to wheel and deal. So with somewhere like Saudi Arabia, that probably is pretty putrid to most Western people, now they've got to dance around a little bit and make as if they're having a decent and even invite them to that council. What was it, the Human Rights Council or whatever the case may be. I mean, the irony of that sort of thing is just ridiculous. But that's the sort of games that are being played here, because there's other things at stake that are probably more valuable. Now, people like us who see things in black and white possibly see that as hypocritical. but behind the scenes, they're going, hey, well, yes, it's this for the economy. We can do this or that. Let's just let them have that little thing or whatever the case may be. But it's only because there's something valuable that other countries want from them. Otherwise, they would be hopefully rightly ostracized, but like North Korea.
It is. It's quite sad that they want to come up to the 21st century.
Well, once the oil
Now,
runs out, right? Once they don't have any more value, then see how long then they'll be brought to heel much quicker. It's
exactly,
only
this
because
is
of
what
this
happened
thing.
in Yemen. Yemen ran out of oil, and look what happened now.
Yeah.
Nothing. Okay, effing twice a week is good for your health. Effing gives proper relaxation for your mind and body. Effing refreshes you. And after effing, don't eat too much. Go for more liquids. When effing, try to stay in bed because it can save you valuable energy. Effing can even reduce your cholesterol level, and effing makes you more committed and you can be sensitive and receive from above. So remember, fasting is good for your health. I like that. I like that. It screws with your mind because as soon as you say effing, you have only one thing in mind. And here I found a theme for Ramadan, fasting. And then fasting twice a week is good for your health. Well, I don't know about that, but anyway. But it gives the whole thing a different meaning.
Well, actually, I do think fasting twice a week is good for your health, but not in the way that Ramadan does it, of course. They've got it
Exactly.
badly
That's the
wrong.
whole thing.
I do the 5-2 diet where you have 600 calories twice a week. They can either be consecutive days or other days. And there's been scientific studies that sort of re-energizes your metabolism and is a healthy way to eat. So you're not completely depriving yourself and you can have as much water as you want, but then you just lower your calories twice a week and then you eat normally the other 5 days. But of course,
I only know the
Ramadan
intermittent one once a week.
yeah, you could do it once a week as well. The 5-2 is apparently shown to
Okay.
be quite good, but certainly
Thank
not.
God
the
I've
way
never heard of
Ramadan
that,
does
and I will never do this. Don't tell me about this.
it. But at
Anyway,
least
I
we don't
thought
have
this
to,
was
abstain from anything passing your lips between dawn and dusk. I mean, that's just really bad
that's
for you. And
ridiculous.
then you become a glutton in the evenings and first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the last item in the news section, the news segment, is that Muslims have uncovered the phylogenetic tree. But because we are based on it, the origin is clay. So it shows you. Can I make this bigger if I do this
I'm on my phone,
or this?
unfortunately. So let's see if I can
There
see
you
what you're
go.
doing there.
So this is the phylogenetic tree according to the Quran. It starts off with clay, and then it says that humans then started at 27 or 30 meters, because this is the 90 cubits of Adam, and then they get consecutively smaller until they reach today's 1.8. So this is wonderful because it starts with clay, and then on the one side you have vases and jars and stuff. Then again you have bricks and you have different things and roof tiles and that, and then you have Adam and Eve, and then Adam and Eve somehow internally again, and then it goes off into the different branches of humans.
Yeah, it's a great meme, isn't it?
I like this so
Now, if you
much
show
that I
that,
couldn't.
I would imagine if you showed that to a number of Muslims, they might even be impressed. They probably, unless they read it closely and then wondered whether it was a meme. But if you said this is what science has uncovered, I bet you could actually get Muslims to believe it.
Come on.
I know, I'm sure you could.
Can
Anything where
you
there's science that they don't
can
really understand, that appeals to them and says that it comes from the Quran, they're going to jump on. Come on.
now
Not everyone,
can
but I'm sure you'll find some.
I don't know if I can enlarge. Can I enlarge this area at the bottom left? No, I can't see any way of doing that. Rats, that's a pity. I can get the volume, I can go all sorts of things, but I can't see any option that would give me the possibility of enlarging this area, because this is incredibly clever. I mean, whoever did this really has some, because it says domain is divine. The kingdom is heaven. the sub-kingdom is Mecca, and the phylum is Muhammad. And then the subphylum is Ali, and then the class is Bedi, the order is Sharia law, and the family is sacred. Oh boy, I think this is hilarious. So I think this is wonderful, and whoever did this, congratulations, it's very clever. Okay. There we go. So let me put this back. Here, this is where we were. All right. Let's quickly run through some Quran sentences, okay?
Unfortunately, I can't read them. I'm on my phone now, so I can't see them, unfortunately. Or maybe there's a way
what a
for me to
pity.
do it.
Yeah,
Well,
you see, this is where we need Thunderous, because he was
Yeah.
very good at this.
But actually, I can bring it up. I just won't be able to share it, so I can go into Quranics and. What verse are you starting at?
It is, hang on, let me just quickly pull this up. Here we go.
You still Surah 4?
I think it was 92.
492.
592. Yeah.
592. So 592.
So let me go here. Let me make this bigger. And now I will share this, and you should be able to see the whole beauty of this. There we go.
Okay, so 592. Go ahead, and and then as you read them, if there's
Okay,
one
that's as big as I can go.
Okay.
Oh, now I made it smaller again.
Or you can make it full screen again if you like. Yeah, and take away our icons if that helps.
I can't make it any bigger than this for some odd reason. No. Okay, yeah, but this doesn't really do much. Okay, let's leave it at this. Mm-hmm. So, chapter 5 in the Quran, which is called food, by the way, the food, the feast, the food, all right? Sentence number 91 was Satan wants to use it to divide you, keep you from good, because what we were talking about is avoid what covers the brain. In other words, what is being interpreted as alcohol, and it is being interpreted as intoxicants. So avoid what covers the brain, leave it to be successful. So if you don't get drunk, you will be successful. What that means, we don't know. Satan wants to use it to divide you and keep you from God, all right? So 92 says you need to obey. 93, and this segment was really, this was a challenge for me. It says, eat what you want. No, don't eat what you want. Believe and hold back, and then hold back some more. The food.
Can we just... Sorry, carry on.
No, this is what I understand it to say. This is what I found there, what it says in the Quran. So I don't know how the hell anybody can make any kind of... Where is this? It says here, on those who believe and do deeds of righteousness, there is no blame for what you eat. And they guard themselves from evil and believe and do deeds of righteousness. Again, guard themselves from evil and believe. Again, guard themselves from evil and do good. Allah loveth those who do good. Okay, what does that mean? I have no idea. So I don't know what to do with something like this. This is why
Actually,
I said... Yeah.
But just before you did that, 592, I just was quickly looking at that, and it always piques my interest at the bottom of 592. I mean, I'll just quickly read it, and then we can do 593. Obey Allah and obey the messenger, and beware of evil. If ye turn back, know ye that it is our messenger's duty to proclaim in the clearest manner. Now, as soon as I hear clearest manner, clear message, whatever the case is, and then we look at the Quran and we go, hang on a moment. So here's another one. Obviously, 3:138 is another example of that. But here it is again. He's proclaiming in the clearest manner. Is this indeed the clearest manner? And of course, they have to argue yes, right? I mean, this is the problem with adhering to a particular book, that you have to argue for no matter what. I think it's clear to any human being that reads this that this is not clear. You can be more clear and concise than this. But if it says it's clear, and he's supposed to be the messenger and God's spoken to him, people just have to accept that it's clear. And this is where the brain, critical thinking and the brain functions just cease. They just stop working. They go on holiday, whatever the case is. So To me, it's all clear notification, clearest manner, depending on whichever translation. But we can move on to 93. It's just whenever I hear that this is a clear message, etc., I kind of want to make a mental note of it. So 592 is another one for me when they start, giving us different interpretations. And as you say, this next verse here, on those, this is Yusuf Ali, on those who believe and do deeds of righteousness, there is no blame. Obviously. So, but that's like tautologists, right? So if you do good, there's no blame. How is that informed? That's not, that's like self-evidently true. So you're not telling us anything. This is like taking up space to say something that is tautologous, trivial. When they guard themselves from evil and believe and do deeds of righteousness. Again, guard themselves from evil and believe. Again, guard themselves from evil and do good. For Allah loveth not those who do good. Yeah, why is it repeating itself there?
I don't know.
I'm sure somebody will be able to tell us what their interpretation is because they've heard it from somebody else or whatever the case is. Give this to anybody that's not read this verse, even if it was a Muslim. So what do you make of this? They would be gobsmacked. They'll try and come up with some ad hoc explanation for this. But if you critiqued it and they didn't have the tafsirs, they didn't have anything else, they couldn't appeal to a scholar, that it would just be, semi-gibberish. It would certainly be just their subjective interpretation. And this is what we mean. Is this a clear message? Is this the best you could do? Come on.
That is why I took an interpretation by someone.
Here's Sahih International, same thing, right? There is not upon those who believe and do righteousness blame concerning what they have eaten in the past. If they now fear Allah and believe and do righteous deeds, and then fear Allah and believe, and then fear Allah and do good, and Allah loves the doers of good. Now that's Sahih International, the modern translation.
Come on, what are you supposed to make of that?
I think we could just move on and say that's, if we were the most charitable guys in the world, we could say that's just not clear, and it's certainly repetitive. And any human being could rewrite that better, in any language, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, 94, I make, who fails to believe in private will be punished. Do you want to read the Quran?
Do you believe Allah doth make a trial of you in a little manner of game, well within reach of game, well within reach of your hands and your lances, that he may test who feareth him unseen. Any who transgress thereafter will have a grievous penalty. Or Sahih International, which is like the modern version, right? And you who have believed, Allah will surely test you through something of the game that your hands and spears can reach. And Allah may make evident those who fear him unseen. And whoever transgresses after that, for him is a painful punishment. Again, give this to any Muslim that claims to be a Muslim and say, what does that mean? And if they could say it without reference to somebody else's interpretation or somebody else coming up with something that they think this means or that they allude to, by all means, a Quranist. How does a Quranist make sense of this? They're not appealing to the Hadith. Presumably, they're not going to appeal to the Sunnah. How are they going to know what this means in history? You give this book to anybody and say, here, read this. I think, yeah.
No, I'm just, frustrated because I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, what do I do with this? And I'm sitting there scratching my head and I'm thinking, okay, let me see. And then I go to alternate explanations and interpretations. And then I just go and take those because, I'm really trying to understand what it says. I'm really trying to give it credit where credit is due. And I always say, look, this is nice, this is cozy, this is comfy. I will always go and point this out. But here, this is total, absolute gibberish. And it gets worse. Do you want to go to 95 before I take my version?
This is like a long one. Okay.
Have
you
fun.
Asked for it.
Yes.
I'm just going to do one of them here because the Sahih one's
Yeah.
longer. Yusuf Ali, O ye who believe, kill not game while in the sacred precincts of your pilgrim God. Let's assume game is animals, maybe, because I've heard game being used as a synonym for like animals. I don't know if that's the case, but let's see. If any of you doth so intentionally, the compensation is an offering brought to the Kaaba of a domestic animal equivalent to the one he killed, as adjudicated by just two men among you, or by way of atonement. The feeding of the indigent, or its equivalent in fasts, that he may taste of the penalty of his deed. Allah forgives what is past. For repetition, Allah will exact from him the penalty. For Allah is exalted and the Lord of retribution. So kill not game during the sacred, within the sacred precincts or the pilgrim garb. So maybe don't kill animals in that particular sacred area or something.
Does it tell you anything more? Because all the others have more details. Because the way that I put it is, don't hunt during pilgrimage or Hajj, which is the sacred sort of condition that you are in. If you do, sacrifice a sheep, goat, cow, etc., or feed the poor or fast. No freeing of slaves here. If you do it again, God will really get cross with you.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Then
that's, yeah.
the next one is the opposite. Hunt and eat all fish. Well, don't. I mean, come on, please. I mean, don't do this. It's like Trump saying, you need to inhale disinfectant or something. So don't eat all fish, because some are not only venomous but poisonous. So don't eat all fish. But it says in the Quran, hunt and eat all fish, but don't hunt on land. Now, we've just heard don't hunt on land. But eating all fish is dangerous. But why should you be able to hunt and eat all fish, animals in the sea, but not animals on the land? And what about animals in the air? What is this? What kind of guidance does this give us?
But also, if you do hunt them on the land, right, in the previous verse, and you kill them, then you've got to bring an offering of another animal and kill that.
Yes. And it goes into great detail when other people go and interpret this. You actually get a whole list of animals. What I said now, sheep, goat, cow, you find in all the other translations. So this is quite weird. Okay,
But this
97.
is devastating. Yeah.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
But
97.
devastating if you think that this is moral acts, right? If you think that other animals do feel pain or sentient creatures, and you're just slaughtering one because you slaughtered two by mistake or in error or whatever the case is, or you slaughter them at the end of, Ramadan, and then you claim that you're doing God's will when you are intentionally just slaughtering animals. For who? For God? Does he need this? Yeah, and it's not just Muslims, by the way. So, but anyway, yeah.
Wow. Anyway, the Kaaba is there to show how great this God is. 98. God is strict and forgiving and merciful. Really, that's what it says there. That's really, God is strict, okay, and forgiving. I don't know how that works. And merciful. How can you be strict and merciful? You can't. Either you're strict, in other words, you send somebody to hell, or you're merciful, in which case you don't send them to hell. And you can't forgive somebody and then still send them to hell. It doesn't work.
Well, presumably he's strict about enforcing the laws, but when you step over the line, then he's merciful, maybe.
Yeah, but then he's not strict anymore.
Well, he's still strict as in like he said that you've...
Okay.
And I'm just trying to think how a Muslim would think. He's strict in the sense that you have... disobeyed a law, but then instead of, because one thing can be strict about the laws, the other can be merciful about the punishment or lack thereof.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, that's true actually. Yeah. Wow. Okay, 99. This is a wonderful one. The messenger delivers the message. God.
The messenger's duty is but to proclaim the message, but Allah knoweth all that reveal and ye conceal. But this is tautology, or otherwise called trivial points, right? It's trivially true. It's like me saying, "Hey, we're having a discussion, you and I say, hang on a moment, stops. But let me just tell you something. All humans breathe air." Now you would probably laugh like that and go, how is that anyway informative? That is trivially true. How is that informative or helpful to this discussion, or indeed anything? Of course, a messenger's duty is to proclaim a message. Otherwise, why is he called a messenger? A human's duty is to breathe air, as if this is somehow informative.
Yeah, but you're supposed to take this seriously. You're supposed to say a God wrote this. This is the most perfect message the most perfect God can deliver to us. I can't. I cannot stay serious, when I read such nonsense. This is, and
it's trivial. Absolutely
go to 100.
trivial.
Good and bad are different. Really?
Yeah.
101. Don't ask what could lead you to doubt. I mean, this is one of the most famous sentences in the Quran, okay? This is, don't ask what can lead you to doubt. And then what follows is, again, total gibberish. I cannot understand what the rest of the sentence means. But the important part is, don't ask what can lead you to doubt. This is important.
Well, let's read it since it's such an important one.
You are cruel.
O ye who believe, ask not questions about things which, if made plain to you, may cause you trouble. But if you ask about things when the Quran is being revealed, they will be made plain to you. Allah will forgive those, for Allah is oft forgiving, most forbearing. Or Sahih International. O you who have believed, do not ask about things which, if they are shown to you, will distress you. But if you ask about them while the Quran is being revealed, they will be shown to you. Allah has pardoned that which is past, and Allah is forgiving and forbearing. So you shouldn't ask about things that will distress you, but if you ask about it when the Quran is being revealed, which could only have happened in Muhammad's time, if in fact that did happen, then it's okay. But any time after that, it's not okay, because it might cause you distress.
Oh, I didn't even read that. I didn't understand that to be this. Wait, hang on. Let me just go back to this one. This is
again. I'm just reading it straightforwardly.
101.
Maybe there's some other deep interpretation or something I'm missing, which is
I
entirely
went to the
possible that
corpus. Do not ask things about meditation. If you ask about it, when is being revealed the Quran, it would be made clear to you. If you ask something that can distress you, when it is being revealed, then it will be made clear to you. Okay, you're not supposed to ask these things, except while the Quran was being revealed.
Yeah, that's the way I'm reading it.
So what is that? And why would then God has been pardoned by Allah about it, and Allah is forgiving and all forbearing?
Allah has pardoned that which is past, and Allah is forgiving or forbearing. Allah will forgive those, for Allah is oft forbearing. Okay, so if you do this, you shouldn't do it, but if you do, He's going to forgive you. But you could only do it, and it would be okay at the time that the Quran was being revealed. Presumably because Muhammad was around and he could answer your question, or at least he could claim to give you an answer. It's a shame that you and I weren't around in the 7th century, Stops, and we had a big debate, and this was all recorded with cameras. This guy would look like a total fool. And by the time he's finished, he'd probably want to kill us, because, we would just ask questions and he'd end up looking like a complete idiot. And, maybe he'd get the rage and want to kill us or something. I wouldn't put it past him. And all we do is ask questions and make it, use critical thinking, which obviously was in very short supply at that time.
Okay, but you've cleared up the gibberish into nonsensical. So
Yeah,
now I do
really,
understand that it could mean that you can ask, you shouldn't ask unless you were asking before the Quran was complete.
Yeah, or being
So if
revealed. Now, it depends what it means by being revealed, right? Because I would take that to mean at the time that it was being revealed, Muhammad, over 23 years. Because then he's there and perhaps he could give you better guidance than anybody else, and then you wouldn't get into distress. So maybe
Right.
you could draw that sort of bridges. But anything else?
But the people, like for the last 300,000 years, asking this question, what about them?
Or indeed after that, right? Because you have Muslim scholars who are trying to come up with these answers. So why are they trying to answer something that might distress Muslims instead of leaving it and quoting this verse and say you shouldn't be asking about that.
Also true. Good point. Yeah, yeah.
So when you have Shabir Ali or whoever trying to make sense of the inheritance era, instead they should say, you shouldn't be asking questions that could distress you. Just here's the verse. We're not going to answer these because it might distress you. I mean, I think the problem is that makes them intellectually just like lazy, right? Especially if they're going to put forward a rational argument, say this is the best thing ever, and they don't want to answer questions. Well, then they'd be seen as complete imbeciles, right?
Yeah,
so
true.
they kind of have to ignore this verse or reinterpret this or say, well, I'm not really doing that, blah, 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 whatever.
And my favorite sentence is the next one. Because those who ask are now non-believers.
Some people before you did ask such questions, and that account lost their faith. A people asked such questions before you, and they became thereby disbelievers. Yes, of course they would. And so they, in fact, well, I take it back. I said their critical thinking was in short supply. Actually, I won't take it back. But clearly there was a little bit of it because here, they obviously didn't have good answers. And these people went, no, this is nonsense, right? I'm not going to believe this.
Let's leave it, exactly. Yeah.
There were critical thinkers even in those days. So there we go.
Okay, do you want to read the next one?
103. I'll do Sahih International shorter. Allah has not appointed such innovations as Bahara. I don't know what that is. I can't pronounce these words. So I'm terrible with pronunciations. Sabaha, Wasla, or Ham. But those who disbelieve invent falsehood about Allah, and most of them do not reason. Let's try the Yusuf Ali. Maybe that'll work. It was not Allah who instituted superstitions like those of a slit-ear she-camel or she-camel let loose for free pasture, or idol sacrifices for twin births in animals, or stallion camels freed from work. It is the blasphemers who invent a lie against Allah, but most of them lack wisdom.
What have you just read?
Yeah, no. I can't make sense of that one, I have to be honest.
Okay, if you read the different commentaries now, what it means is that ignorant non-believers invented these lies, and it refers to the pagans who were apparently slitting the ears of cattle and camels, what we had in chapter 4, sentence 119, where God says, I will command them so that they will slit the ears of cattle. And here it says, ignorant non-believers invented these lies because the pagans used to have animal sacrifices. So if a she-camel gave birth to twins, for example, she was not allowed to be eaten, and she would then be sacrificed at a later date at some festival. And this is why they cut off a piece of the ear so that everybody would know, do not kill this camel and eat it. And this is what this is referring to. But it's, wow.
You can't make that out from this verse, can you?
No. And anyone, I mean, even a 6-year-old girl would be able to make a better sentence that would be clearer and more, I don't know.
But you see, what would happen here, of course, is a Muslim would go and read the tafsirs. He'd ask an imam or he'd ask somebody else, and his brain would be primed, because it's like something that Michael Shermer did. I think we've discussed this before, right, where he plays music tracks backwards. And you can't hear anything. You can't really make out what's being done, right? Then he plays it back at the same time as showing you the words that apparently it's being said.
And suddenly they're so clear. Yeah,
your brain is primed. And it's exactly the same thing here, right? This sentence in itself is very difficult to make any sense of. And as soon as you read that thing that somebody else has come up with, suddenly your brain is primed, and now it sounds like it all makes sense. But you couldn't do it on its own. So it's like the priming of a brain, right? Other people have to make sense of this because it's not clear or complete enough on its own.
That's why it says, if somebody else tells you what the Quran says, you're a Muslim. If you read it yourself, you're an atheist.
Yeah.
104, come to Islam. No thanks. 105, obey. 106, useful. Note, please, I'm saying this is a useful sentence. It's a useful command. It has nothing to do with any kind of spirituality. This is the typical political ideology we're talking about, where the Quran tells people how to interact with other people, which is normally the duty of politics. Make a will. Check your witnesses. And then again, obey. And then it goes off again. 124,000 messengers have no clue how they did.
What verse is that?
109.
Oh, wow. Okay. A bit further forward. I just wanted to see
Yep.
where the 100.
Because make the will, check your witnesses. I mean, this is different sentences, but I put this all like into one.
Where does the
free flow.
124,000 messengers
No,
come
this
from?
is in the hadith. The number.
Okay.
The number is in the hadith, but here it says all the messengers.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Is that the end? I can't see on my screen here. It's a bit small.
Yeah, I've done the next batch until the end of the this chapter, but I think it's going to take too long
Yeah, we can always do that next week, isn't it?
because there's another 10 sentences in this chapter.
Well, let's keep it for next week, I'm sure, because there's plenty of other things, unbelievers, to talk about.
Yeah. Then let me just mark this as done. Then I know that next time we will just go and start with the next batch. All right. Now, with this non-believer thing, I actually spent a lot of time thinking about this because there's so much. Now, non-believer. What is a believer? Normally you find born Muslims, and you find that a Muslim is somebody who is indoctrinated since childhood, that who is brainwashed, who has been fed Islam, Muhammad, and all these things all his life. And this is why a person will believe this, and this is why I'm actually hesitant to criticize Muslims who have been born with this, because they have, I don't know, this childhood indoctrination is very powerful, because you are trusting grown-ups who are your source of everything that is correct, true, and viable in reality. They explain reality to you. And if your parents and everybody else around you does the same thing, you will do as what, I mean, I wanted to drive a car because I saw my dad drive a car. So I wanted to copy that, because children tend to want to copy the parents. And this is what happens. This is why children try and copy the parents, and if they go down on their knees and they bang their head on the floor, well, this is what they're going to copy. There's a very nice video how a guy is doing push-ups and his son is trying to copy him, and how he's doing that. It's so cute. But this is what happens. So I'm actually hesitant to criticize Muslims all the time for everything. I mean, if they're being obnoxious, arrogant, and narcissistic and that, then, okay, it's a different story. But I will not generally criticize them. And I will not generally say, look, you're all stupid, things like that, because I don't think they are. Now, a non-believer in Islam, and this is a topic on its own, because you have a kafir, you have a mushrik, you have an infidel. You have the kafir, who is a person who, and I wrote this down, a person who rejects or disbelieves in God as per Islam or the tenets of Islam, denying the dominion and authority of God. And traditionally, this is someone who actively covers or hides the truth. And there is a disagreement whether people of the book are included, or Muslims who have committed a grave sin are included as well. And there is consensus that polytheists are generally known as kafirs. Then you have a mushrik, where the group is called the mushrikun. And this is reserved for polytheists, those who worship other gods. Okay, so this can include, and this is quite funny, Trinitarians, because they could, and some still can't, understand the concept of the Trinity in Christian beliefs. And then you have the infidel, the sort of an umbrella term, including atheists, polytheists, animists, heathens, pagans, all non-baptized and blah, 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 because it comes from the word fidelis in Latin, those without faith. This is where faith comes from. This is the infidel. So this is not even an Arabic term, but it was coined in the 15th, 16th century by Christians. So if I look at this whole topic of non-believers, for me, it's just a lack of integrity. The usual reaction to the pushback by non-believers. And what do you get? You get whining, playing the victim, attacking the speaker, not the speech. And there's a good chance the non-believer will know the doctrine or the Quran better than most Muslims. Because this is what I find a lot of times, that Muslims have not even read this. So they think that they are superior to non-believers because they know more about the Quran, but they don't, because they've never read it. So, like I said, having someone tell you what the Quran says makes you a Muslim. Reading it makes you an atheist, because then you see for yourself what it says. Like today, if a Muslim reads those sentences in chapter 5 and tells me, yes, this is divine authorship, they're crazy. So this is why I say it's a lack of integrity. And 85%, we have to be realistic here. What we just heard from Rob as well, 85% of the population of this planet reject the Quran and Islam. And that's reality. So the Quran says that I was created by this Islamic creator God who knows everything. So I repeat this all the time. During the creation of Stop Spamming from clay, the Islamic creator God must have known that here in the real world, I will be a skeptic. I will be a person without a God belief. So I was created with the attributes that I have, according to Islamic teaching and logic. Yet, I am punished for being how I was created. And this is the mismatch between the Quran and the real world, where a creator God creates every human being, and the jinn, of course, to worship this glorious, narcissistic, best of all creators. But only 15% actually do.
Yeah, but
And
it's
this
your
is,
free will stops somehow that makes you
it's
a
a
disbeliever.
stunningly high failure rate, not worthy of any self-respecting God who knew while I was being created what was going to happen to me. So this does not
Yeah, but
include free will.
it's the free will of everybody else who's just not wanting to buy into it. They're just not being sincere, you see.
Yeah, but this God
So it's
knew
not
while I
Allah's
was
fault.
being created. I mean,
Sorry?
if I see a chair and I make the legs and I see that one of the legs is shorter, I know that this chair is never going to stand stable. So I know during the phase of creation that there's something wrong. So I will stop doing it. And I will not finish this and then stop the person who, punish the person who buys it and said, well, it's your own fault. It's the same thing.
Well,
So
we're endlessly told that, hey, yes, Allah knows the future, but He's not making you do it. If the contradiction isn't clear enough there, and I've spelt it out multiple times, like you would to a child, right? You'd explain it to a child, even a child that grasps basic logic would understand this. Now, again, there's other, somebody tried to read to me at one point. He didn't really understand, but he tried to read to me. So they try to make stuff up to show that there isn't a contradiction. They'll introduce other terms, other techniques, or other ideas to try and avoid this contradiction. But the
that's what
straightforward
I'm
Muslim
saying. It's,
just doesn't see this, right? And it's like, how
yeah.
do you not see this logical contradiction? That is a textbook definition of a contradiction. Two things that are mutually exclusive, you're trying to put the two of them together.
But this is why I'm saying it's a lack of integrity. Because they can't be honest about it.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's not even that they can't be honest. It's just that the critical thinking in the brain is just not operating. They've been told for so long that this is the case, that the brain, it's like there's a circuit there where critical thinking could take place, but it's like a track there where the train runs, right, where the train no longer runs, and it just gets grown over, and so you'd have to fire a massive thing. You'd have to take a new train down there to clear the entire track out so that it could start running again. And maybe in some people that thing is completely stopped altogether because of the idea that, I don't have to think about this. If somebody tells me this, I'm not going to engage my brain to think about it. I'm just going to repeat what I've heard and sleep happily tonight.
If I were to tell you that there is a doctor in Denmark who found the cure for the COVID-19 virus. And all you need to do is take a pill and it will kill the virus in you. What will you do?
You asking me?
Yeah?
Yeah, I'd look for research, and I would want to find out if that's been proven. I want to see
Okay.
scientific data.
You were told that up until now there is no cure. Would you now, if I tell you there is somebody, will you immediately update this? Will you immediately totally reject this? Or will you say, hang on, it is maybe possible, let me look into it. Let me see why this idiot is telling me this, where normally he's not actually prone to, stupid claims. Let me check this. Isn't that the first reaction that you will have?
Yeah, yeah, of
So
course.
why is it impossible for a Muslim to say, hang on, this guy is educated, he knows what he's talking about, he's read the Quran, he's done all this, he's da 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 da. If he is telling me these things, why don't I go and check?
There's a
Why
difference there,
isn't that
Stops.
the reaction of a Muslim?
Yeah, but there's a difference there, Stops, right? And it's obviously been engineered in such a way, right? This book is divinely dictated, and it is correct. And any critique that you bring must be, by definition, a mistake. So if you start with that presupposition, which wasn't, the original, the analogy didn't include that, then you just must be mistaken. You just haven't got the right end of the stick. So when you've been inculcated and brainwashed into believing that this must be correct and any critique must be wrong, that's your a priori starting position, then of course you can do that.
Yeah, but that's like wearing blinkers, and you're not even able to think maybe I'm wearing blinkers.
No, well, of course not. And as we've just seen with these verses, right, the moment that happens, you become a disbeliever. So how do you avoid somebody becoming a disbeliever? By asking questions, or, having things that would put you in quote unquote distress or get you to think a little bit? You stop the thinking process. And how do you do that? You tell them that this is the case and that thinking is not required under certain circumstances. And there's a grave punishment or there's a grave distress that would happen. And so you find under non-rational ways to avoid that sort of thinking going on, because presumably that's exactly what happened at the time of Muhammad. You could read between the lines there, and it created these disbelievers. And there was obviously some concern. Shit, well, these people are reading this. They're not being convinced by this, even when Muhammad's around. What's the chance of people going to be convinced after he's not around? So how do we stop people asking too many, critical questions? We find a way to stop them thinking about it, especially if they're brought up in it, right?
And I see Maverick is here with this nonsense, It's a pity that I can't. I don't want to go back and ask him about this. It's stupid.
Yeah, again, it's all subjective, right? But these lot actually hate that which they believe don't exist. It's weird. It's only weird to a mind that isn't paying attention here. Firstly, we don't hate it. We're critiquing it. Hate is a very strong word that I'd reserve for very unique circumstances. I wouldn't even hate people like Maverick or anybody else. I just think they're profoundly confused, right? Hate is a very negative emotion that eats away at you. And I think it's best reserved for, when it can drive you in some way for something. And it's certainly, I wouldn't use it up on people unless there was an exceptionally good reason to do so. But that's entirely subjective, right? The hate. And if I was to ask him what's the methodology, he'll come up with some ad hoc subjective view and how he can justify the word hate, because his brain has come up with it. And then if he was asked, right, how do you justify that? What's your methodology and why should I accept that? Those questions would just put him into a complete tailspin, right? Now he has to justify his ad hoc, subjective, off-the-cuff statement about hate. And he's not the only one. The others do it as well, right? Islamophobe, haters, whatever the case is. But when you ask them to justify, that's
No, I
like,
can't.
yes, now they drown. Now there's nothing to be said there. And I do that a lot. What's your methodology and why should I accept it? And at that point, I just get complete silence or a babbling, incoherent response.
Maverick, it's a pity you weren't there in the beginning when I very clearly said that I feel sorry for people like you. Look what Islam is doing to you. Look what Islam is doing to your brain. And the thing is, you are fighting it like crazy. I remember you believed hadith. You believed all this shit. And then suddenly somebody showed you how nonsensical they are, and now you've said, well, maybe then the hadith is not for me, let me go for the Quran. Now we're showing you how nonsensical the Quran is, but your brain will not allow the facts, will not allow the truth, will not allow the reality that we are talking about this month to come through. You are fighting it. You do not have a way of somehow rationalizing what is happening. You will just go on emotions. This is all that you are doing. It's just emotions.
You ask, why are we
Okay.
profoundly confused for simply coming to a different conclusion? Well, it's not simply coming to a different conclusion. It's the fact that that conclusion is in itself a confused conclusion. Let's just with the thing that we just talked about, the free will, or the idea that this is a clear book. If I gave you this book and you never had any training, and even if I gave you now and I said you do not have access to teachers or the tafsirs or anything else, make sense of this. If you hadn't read it, or if you hadn't been primed in your brain already, you'd have no idea. You'd have to just come up with some ad hoc idea. And then when you try and defend free will and omniscience, that is such a clear contradiction in a straightforward understanding of it.
No, you
unless
can't.
you try and throw in some philosophical idea to circumvent it. If you don't have the ability or the thoughts to do that, and then you want to claim that free will and omniscience can run hand in hand, this is what I mean about confused. Logic only applies when you're critiquing somebody else when it's your turn, and this happens for other believers, by the way, as well. And then suddenly it evaporates. It's fascinating. It's a psychological thing, right? I don't know if there's a particular name for it. Maybe somebody in the chat will know.
Yeah, but look, can you read? You can't read what he's saying. He says,
I can
where have I claimed to be favored? But this is what he's doing non-stop. This is the only thing that he's doing. He constantly claims that he is the one who understands and we don't. We are the ignorant ones. We don't know what we're talking about. We don't understand Islam because we don't want to, because we just want to hate. We just want to... No. This is the whole point. You are claiming to be favored all the time. This is the only argument you have. You are favored in that you are the one who understands it and we don't.
This free will and determination argument remains even as an atheist. Okay, you can do the tu quo quo thing. I accept that there's determinism. So I think that we have an illusion of free will. There's no contradiction in my worldview. It's only you that thinks that there's a libertarian version of free will and omniscience. I don't think there's omniscience to begin with, so I don't have that problem either. So I don't know where you get. This is what I mean about confusion. Firstly, doing the tu quo quo, you are implicitly accepting that there's a contradiction, but then you're saying, hey, but you guys also have a contradiction. But when I point out there isn't a contradiction, what's your response? You by all means come onto the Discord server this evening, and we'll see if we can help clear some of your confusion.
And this has nothing to do with being an atheist.
Anyway,
Okay.
Let's move on, as you're saying.
Let's move on. So what I've done is I've collected some sentences so that people understand what we're talking about. Because I would like to get some facts. I want to put this on a factual basis, so we don't just waffle, but we're actually looking at what it says in the Quran about this group of non-believers. So in chapter 2, and we've been there, we've read this, in their hearts is disease. Now, in their hearts is not something that we know. In my heart, there's only blood. So what we need to do, we need to understand what the people were using in those days as a descriptor. The same thing as mamalakat aymanukum, the right, what their right hands possess, is is it a euphemism? I don't know what is. It's the expression that they used for a slave. The same way in their hearts is disease does not literally mean that you can now look at the word hearts and look at, the way that the word heart is used. No, it is an expression, which means that we are somehow imperfect, that we, the non-believers, are in some way diseased in our being. And so Allah has increased their disease, which means that we were created with a faulty understanding or belief or whatever, and then this God, seeing that he has fucked up, then goes and still makes it worse, and then complains about it, and then says, well, for them, and for them is a painful punishment. So in other words, a painful punishment is equal to hell, torture, eternal torture in hell. For them is a painful punishment because they used to lie. No, you idiot. If you claim you created me, then you should bloody well take responsibility for your craftsmanship. If you
Yeah,
create a faulty chair, you cannot then go and punish the chair for your screwed up work. Doesn't work, you know?
yeah, and they don't have the get out of jail type thing that the Christians try to claim with original sin, which, as we I think we talked about last time, at least on Discord, that is a devastating position for a Christian. But if you avoid that devastating position, which the Muslims do, um, in this case, then you can't use original sin and say, well, it was Adam and Eve's fault, and so we're all sinners. And if this is the case, and if you're going to try and throw in free will here, and he knows that we're the case, you can't. Free will doesn't work here either. So if someone is earnestly trying to find out what is true or likely to be true, aka, trying to think clearly and read this book, and they come to a different conclusion, then of course this is the typical response, right? They, however you interpret, their hearts are diseased, i.e., they're switched off, they have hate, they don't have an open heart or an open mind or whatever other euphemism you want to use in place of that. So it just becomes that thing of, well, at no point will they ever acknowledge that actually maybe there's a problem with this book, or maybe your thinking is straightforward and ours isn't. It's got, but that's why I say they start with the position that this came from God and it cannot be mistaken. So anything that you bring, there must be a mistake with you. It must be a disease in your heart, faulty thinking, whatever the case may be. So it's.
And here's another example. Ahmed, how the hell do you have an issue with good efforts being rewarded by God? The issue is it's immoral. The thing is, what you are doing is you are doing good because you are being rewarded, and you will not do bad because you will get punished. It is not that you are a good person. It is not that you have any kind of moral grounding on your own. That is why my moral level is much, much higher than yours, because I don't do that. So there is a huge issue, and I'm not surprised that you don't understand this. But let me tell you, there's a huge problem with that, and that is that you are immoral. That you believe something is good because your God says so. That is why you accept slavery, but you relabel it to make it more palatable. But it's still the same thing. This is why your morality is of such low value, because you accept all these things. You think it's perfectly okay to have a man rape a woman even if she is married. And you are okay with that because it's in the Quran. And that is the problem that I have with Islam.
I suppose Stops, he's actually not okay with it because he's desperate to try and reinterpret that so that it doesn't say that. So that, in a sense, tells me that he's not okay with it. And if it says that, then, and you're not okay with it, then you have to find another interpretation for that.
And now I'm lying. You see, this is the problem. Why am I lying? I am not lying. That's what it says in the Quran. Read your own bloody book. Okay, 2:171. The example of those who disbelieve is like that one who shouts at what hears nothing, but calls and cries cattle of sheep. So I am deaf, dumb, and blind, so they don't understand.
Yeah, again, it's just the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Right, if you don't accept this, and it comes from the Word of God, and any critique, and you still don't accept it after it's quote-unquote been explained to you, then it's your fault. But just going back to the other thing, Stops, I've asked people, right? I've asked believers, Muslims and others, which person do you think is more moral? The person that does something not because there's a reward or a punishment, but because they want to help their fellow human beings, or the person, all things being equal, who does something because they think they're going to get a reward either in this life or in the afterlife, or a punishment for not doing it. Which of those two people is more moral? And you know what? I can't remember a time when somebody has straightforwardly said, person A. There will be a dance, there will be rhetoric, there will be anything other than acknowledging that the person who does it, not because there's some sort of reward or punishment, is the more moral person, which is straightforwardly the case if any rational person is thinking about it. So, yeah.
It's terrible. Maverick, yes, there is slavery. Just because you call it supercalifragilisticexpialidocious doesn't make it better. There is
That's
slavery, what we call slavery. There are people in another country who came from a very different tribe, a very different area, a very different ethnicity, very different circumstances and everything, and they are forced to work somewhere else for nothing. And that is wrong. It is called slavery. If you don't like the word, well, fuck you. It's called slavery. And renaming it, relabeling it without changing what happens behind it does not help. I don't
But
even
you're
know why
welcome
I
to
get
come on
upset. I mean,
Discord and you can have that discussion
there's
with
no
Sam.
slavery in the Quran. That's a blatant lie. It's true because it's written in Arabic. So the word slavery does not appear.
Anyway,
But it makes me so cross, to have people like that who really are too stupid and too dishonest, who have no integrity to accept it and say, okay, yes, there's slavery, and today we need to change it, and we need to abolish this, and we need to change the lines in the Quran which contains it. But no, there's no slavery. Fuck.
yeah, but we know that. So try not to get upset, or
Yeah,
take it on
it still
Discord.
gets me
Otherwise, it
upset.
goes a detour a little bit.
So let's go into sentence 217. And whoever of you reverts from his religion to disbelief. In other words, if you are a Muslim and you leave Islam and you become a non-believer and then you die while a disbeliever, their deeds have become worthless. So any good deed that you have done is worthless in this world and the hereafter. And those are the companions of the fire. They will abide therein eternally.
But it
Can you
doesn't
believe
really
it?
mean fire stops.
No, it
Probably
doesn't.
just means that
It
it's
means
slightly
stroking with
warmer.
roses.
Yeah, it's probably just like a humid climate. It's not like cold. It's not like the cold UK, right? I'm sure if you interpret it some way, and it's not even really hell. It's maybe just a slightly warmer place than normal. Might be slightly uncomfortable. You might get a slight suntan or whatever. That's the sort of things, right? Because they don't want to accept that that's the case, right? Simply for disbelieving, you can go to hell. Again, many Muslims are better than the book. For them, that just is incomprehensible that you could, certainly for eternity or even for any sort of amount of time. Um, unless it could be shown that you were being dishonest, in which case, even then, I think it would be an excessive punishment. But if it could be shown that you were in fact being dishonest, you'd actually did believe it, and you pretended you didn't, so you knew that you were being dishonest. That would be fine. But if you honestly are not convinced because the reasons are not good enough, and you're expecting God to have a higher bar, your bar for God is higher, are you going to be punished for that? Especially if God could easily, trivially meet your standards. But then, of course, the claim is, well, now you're asking God to meet your standards. Yes, I am. If my standards is higher than yours, and if he's the God he says he is, he can easily, whatever my standard is, he could trivially meet it, and I would be helpless if I was intellectually honest, but to accept that it's the case. Instead, this sort of thing we get. And then people wonder why we don't believe, because our bar is just a rationally level higher than anybody that has accepted this stuff.
And again, chapter 2, sentence 27. Who break the covenant of Allah. Now, this covenant, a covenant is an agreement, a contract, agreed upon by both sides. I don't have any kind of covenant, any kind of agreement, any kind of contract with any of the gods. None of them. I don't have a contract with the dragon. I don't have a contract with fairies or anything. I don't have it. There is nothing of the sort. But still it says, who break the covenant of Allah after contracting it, and sever that which Allah has ordered to be joined, and cause corruption on earth. It is those who are the losers. I always see Jeremy Clarkson, loser. Come on, how can you take this seriously? How can anybody come to me and say this is seriously what the Quran says? That a God is telling me that I have a contract with this God. Where the hell is the contract? Show me the contract.
Well, by
You
virtue of
can't
the
have
fact, I mean, if you do an internal view of it, right, by virtue of the fact that he created you and supposedly gave you a fitra, which I think has been rebutted, not rebutted, sorry, refuted. I think that claim is false. But let's assume that it were true for a moment. then by virtue of that happening, you are bound in the contract. You don't have the choice about it. The contract has been made, and because he's created you, that is the contract. And now, presumably, they could perhaps argue that you agreed before you were born or something like that. But if that isn't the case, if that's not clear, then it was a contract that was signed at your birth or your creation or whatever the case is, and you didn't have a say in the matter. Now, if that were the case by any stretch in the real world today, we wouldn't call that a legal or a binding contract. If somebody didn't consent to it, have the ability to understand the consequences, consider the options, etc., was normally somebody over the age of 18, at least probably into their 20s, to be honest, then that wouldn't be a
Before being
binding
able to
contract.
do that, in the first place. Oh, and by the way, the FITRA, I debunked it, because not only did I show that it's wrong, I also provided evidence to the opposite, because there's a study that shows the opposite is true.
Who does the study reference?
Do you want me to? I don't have
just
the
off
name
top
from
of
the.
you. It's not the Piraha in Amazon, is it? Is it somebody
No,
else?
no, 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 no. The Piraha is just a tribe that doesn't have a god in their language. They only take what is real. They don't have this concept of a god. I'm talking about a scientific study where they went and experimented with children to show that children have the ability to recognize from a certain age onwards that parents know better than they do, and then if they have been indoctrinated by a god, they will believe anything that is attributed to a god, whereas the children who have not had that don't.
So that's kind of the opposite of that Oxford study that used to be
Correct.
claimed,
Well, it
right?
wasn't a study. There's never been a study.
No,
The
I know.
Barrett and Petrovich only wrote books. There was no study to this. The only thing that there was their experiment with children who showed empathy. In other words, if somebody pushed an object off the table, they came forward to help. And then if they asked them, okay, what is a tree for? They said, well, it's so that the birds can sit on this. So this
There's also a thing about the box as well, right? Where they thought the parents knew
exactly.
what was in the box, right?
How
But
do
that
you
was
know
only when
what
they
is
were
in the
very
box?
young.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is the whole point, that they never had any kind of experiment showing anything about the built-in belief of a god, or if you go to an island and you don't do anything, they will come back with a god. This has never happened. It's been claimed again and again, but it has never happened. There was no experiment. It was only claimed in the book. But there's no data, there's nothing that says it, but the study came out that showed the opposite. So anyway, we're not here. We can talk about that at a later date. One of the themes. Then in 27, here are the signs, self-evident, in the hearts of those endowed with knowledge. This is the fitra. And none but the unjust reject our signs. Well, I wish there were facts.
Yeah, so the unjust is really those who are critical thinking. But instead of calling them critical
Yes.
thinkers, we'll misrepresent it and poison the well against people who will critique, like we do, quite robustly, and point out how silly this book is and how it couldn't have come from an all-knowing God who wanted to send a clear message. If it was from men who wanted to confuse people, then it's doing a fantastic job. That goal is being satisfied. But if the goal is an all-knowing creator who wanted to send it clearly that you and I and every other person who ever read it or any translation of it would be convinced, then it's a terribly poor job, stupendously poor.
And there are no signs that are self-evident in the heart or in the mind. Even if I translate heart for being mind, there are no self-evident signs. That's stupid. Everything shows it's the opposite. Why would I assign something to a god? It doesn't make sense.
Well, again, remember we're talking about people who were hugely ignorant of the 7th century, and so everything they look around, A, they didn't know they were cherry picking. B, they didn't understand how the nature worked, but it happens today, right? I still speak to religious people today who look at the wondrousness of the world around them, and of course, when you point out all the things that are not wonderful, they just clam up and don't want to accept that there's not wonderful things. So when you point out or show them the cherry picking, in other words, you expose them to reality and the bias in their thinking, which is a typical human trait that we all do to some degree. they're not too pleased with that. And so, of course, these people were doing exactly the same thing, but they were far more ignorant than people are, or at least could be today. You have that access to that information. They didn't. They looked around and went, wow, look at how the rain falls and it flows. And it all just seems to work so well. And of
And this
course,
is the
not
point.
knowing
I
what,
think people today should know better. But
of course,
I had somebody today on Facebook who said, "Look at the fine-tuned universe." I can't believe it. He says there is a clear sign for the creator if you look at the fine-tuned universe. And I said, hang on, what are you on about? Number one, look at the debate between William Lane Craig and Professor Sean Carroll, where he brought up the 5 points and he conclusively annihilated any claim towards the fine-tuning argument. Then I did the same thing in the Dabo response team. There's a whole long video, 10 minutes or 12 minutes, showing how stupid that claim actually is. So there are so many refutations of this claim. I don't understand how anybody still today can come up with fine-tuning when there are so many refutations of this. And this is exactly what you are saying. People 2,000 years ago, okay, they didn't know this. They didn't have all the data available to them. But today we have. We can't go and say, well, Mars is a sphere. Well, we know, well, Venus is a sphere, and Jupiter and the Sun and the Moon. All these are spheres, but Earth is flat. That doesn't work. Come on.
but
So
I mean,
we
Maverick,
have.
even today, Maverick's doing the same thing. There he says that you reject the signs of the creator, although he's the creator of this wonderful universe. You're
Yeah.
stupid. But again, that's just question begging, firstly.
It's
But even if you
childish.
accept that there's a creator, um, you're only looking at what you think are the wonderful bits, and the other bits, which would kill us instantly. The fact that there's tremendous unnecessary suffering from beings that don't have a moral character, aka non-humans, and all that sort of stuff. Is that wonderful too? Where insects bury into other insects and their young explode out or come out of it, a bit like the movie Alien, causing that being to die in a slow, painful way, right? Other
Yeah,
sentient
exactly.
creatures, right? Is this wonderful as well by your lights? And of course, they would have to say, yes, this is wonderful somehow.
Yeah,
But then you
exactly.
ask, well, how is
This
that
is the
wonderful?
point.
And,
This is
and
the point. They
Skydive
must.
Film made a great point about this early on, especially with animals, right? To me, the animals is a devastating case against a moral or good God. Because with humans, you can try the whole testing, and there's all kinds of theodicies, as it's called, these responses, mostly from Christians, as to try and explain how there's evil in the world and all that sort of stuff. But when it comes to the animals, none of that works. They're up a creek without a paddle there. Just use the example of the lion, right? And Skydive Phil made a great point about this. So the lion needs, because a good God could have made these creatures so they just ate grass. They didn't have to eat other animals. But let's assume for some reason he had some mystical, mysterious reason for one animal eating another. Well, of course, instead of the animal suffering, and of course, when they grab it around the neck, it has to suffocate. The claws are pulled in. There's a tremendous amount of suffering and pain from these animals. All that had to happen is the moment the lion either grabs it with the paws, with the claws, or with the teeth, it's an instantaneous, natural, what's the term when you knock somebody out? Anesthetic, right? They could have put that in there. Then there's no suffering of the animal, even if there was some mysterious reason. But of course, he's all powerful, so he didn't need to create animals such that to eat other animals, right? They could have just, survived by the photons coming down from the sun. I mean, he's all powerful, right? I expect him to do better. But then you say this is all wonderful, and all you have to do is point out the things that are not so wonderful. And what's the response then? So, yeah, Maverick,
What's
tell
the
us
res-
about all the things that are not so wonderful. Tell me then if
and
it's
what's
still
his
wonderful or
response?
not.
What
Who's
insects die in a painful way? LOL. How did you test that? LOL. He thinks this is funny. You think, really, Maverick, this is how immoral you are. This is how corrupt your brain is. You think that this is funny to torture another animal? You think that this is a lol? To see how animals writhe in pain and how they are slowly eaten up from inside out. And I've put a video out there showing this. And you think this is a lol? Laughing out loud to see an animal suffering like that?
is it wonderful? Is it wonderful for one animal to inflict pain and suffering on another? Could God have made it such that that pain and suffering, that these animals, which are amoral, by the way, they're neither moral nor immoral, they don't have that capability. Do you think God could have created it such that there wasn't unnecessary suffering? And the answer is, of course, if you think he's all powerful, then it is. So, in other words, if you claim that it's wonderful, I can present you with a scenario that is, quote, more wonderful, in which case it's not as wonderful as you claim. And all I'm pointing out is that you're cherry picking and you are not thinking clearly. And again, come to Discord, I'll bring you plenty of examples where all I have to ask you is, could God have done it such that there wasn't unnecessary suffering? And at that
Yeah.
point, you're done.
Maverick, you're really disgusting. Really. Like I just pointed this out half an hour ago. Anybody who is a normal human being will ask, listen, what's the story behind this? What you do is, lol. You say, how did you test it? You have no fucking clue what we're talking about. But you immediately reject it because it goes against your belief. That's how disgusting you are. You can't even understand what we're talking about. We are not talking about one animal eating the other. I'm not talking about one animal just simply killing another for food. I'm talking about an animal laying its eggs in the inside of another animal to be eaten from inside out, slowly, painfully, with making sure that all the vital organs are not touched, so that this animal stays alive as long as possible to feed the animals growing inside it. And then when they are finished, they will go, they will cut open this animal, run outside, and go off and leave this animal to die. That's the thing that I find so incredibly, it's unbelievable. I cannot believe that a merciful creator can't find a better way of bringing animals to life. There are better ways. But no, we have this. This is reality. This is what we're talking about. We are comparing Quran and reality. And the reality that we see does not in any way compare to what we would like to see, or what is good, or what is beneficial, or what is in any way good for anybody else. This is the terrible thing, and that all you are capable of is just to laugh. That's sick. Okay, 332. Say, obey Allah and the Messenger. So we need to obey Muhammad. So if Muhammad says, go and rape the females, enjoy yourself while you are raping the females, do it. This is what we need to do. We need to obey the Messenger. But this is what God says, if you turn away, then indeed Allah does not like the disbelievers. So if we don't do as commanded by the Messenger, as commanded by a pirate, somebody who tortured, somebody who killed, who decapitated, who raped, enslaved, all these things. And if we don't do that, then Allah does not like us. I'm sorry, my morality is different than that.
You can see why they would
385.
say it in their world, right? So obviously, if you follow the messenger, then you're good. If you don't, you don't, right? Then and
Yeah.
Allah won't like you. I mean, but it's a tautologist point. Hey, do this and you're good. Don't do it and you're bad. I mean, the one entails the other. So to say it out loud, it's almost as if you're speaking to children who can't see a logical entailment from one to the other. And I think by the time you're like 7 or 8 or whatever the case is, you can follow that
Yeah,
line of
this is
logic.
true,
Right?
yeah. Yeah. 385. This is also another crucial one. Whoever desires other than Islam, never will it be accepted from him, and he in the hereafter will be among the losers. So this is again telling us that Islam is the best religion. There are several sentences like this in the Quran, telling us that Islam is the one that will triumph over all the others, that Muslims have this supremacy. They are the best of all people, the best of all nations, the best of all groups, and Islam is the best religion. I'm sorry, it's not.
Must be tough for a Muslim who lives in this country, who actually secretly likes the West, but wants to be a Muslim on the outside. What do they do? Right? Do they have some form of deception, either to themselves or to others?
cognitive dissonance. That's where it comes in.
Because really, I think many of the Muslims that are brought up in the UK or the West, while they want to stick to Islam, if they had to stick to a version like Saudi Arabia or anything else like that, they would very likely, if they were honest and we could do cognitive testing on them, they wouldn't be happy with that. They'd rather have a far greater level of freedom, but then include whichever cherry pick things they want out of Islam and ignore the rest. And you'd probably find it wouldn't be too many, maybe wearing a burqa or a niqab or whatever. But, you shouldn't have to pray 5 times a day or fast for the whole month, or, give 10% if you don't really have it, or whatever else, right? They could cherry pick the bits they don't want, but then claim to be Muslims, right? So they want to have their cake and eat it. I think that's what Western Muslims would want to do.
Woe to those whose hearts are hardened against the remembrance of Allah. Those are in manifest error. Well, who did this?
Exactly. Who hardened their hearts? And the only answer a Muslim must say, of course, it's a logical entailment again. They must say that believers harden their own hearts.
I made you with just 5 fingers, and now because you don't have 6, I'm going to punish you.
The absurdity of hardening your own heart so that you can't see the truth is just completely irrational. So obviously somebody else hardened your heart. You don't do it yourself, especially if this were to be the truth and you are a truth seeker. Then to harden your own heart against the truth would be completely irrational. So the hardening must come externally, if you're honest. The only way you can get around this is to say that every single person who doesn't believe is dishonest. And that, of course, would, again, require a proof that nobody could present.
Yeah. And hearts are hardened. Again, this is just, I don't know, what do you call these things? It's not a euphemism. It's not an idiom. What do you call these things if you have an expression which does not mean what, like sunrise? We know it's wrong, but we still use it. What do you call that?
Yeah, it escapes me. I'm sure somebody in the chat will immediately type it in for us.
Because there's a word like that for those things which we know
it's on the tip of my tongue.
Factually incorrect, but culturally we use them anyway.
It's descriptive, isn't it? But yeah, I know what you mean. I can't think
and
of the
this
term.
Is exactly the thing, that whose
kind
hearts are hardened.
I think there's another word for it as well, though.
There is, okay, whatever. So whose hearts are hardened doesn't mean literally that we're talking about the heart, okay? So that's it.
Yeah.
Those who disbelieve enjoy themselves and eat as grazing livestock eat, and the fire will be residence for them.
Hang on a moment, but if grazing livestock eat, presumably that's a good thing. So those who disbelieve and enjoy themselves and eat like grazing livestock, unless you say grazing livestock, the way they eat are bad. In other words, they eat, freely. So is eating freely a bad thing then? So if you emulate grazing livestock, which is eating enough to keep yourself full and moving on, is that a bad thing? And if it is, well, then how should you eat? Because that's like a point against grazing livestock, which again is a natural thing that animals do. So are animals naturally doing something that is evil? Well, not that they know the difference between right and wrong in any case, but is their actions inherently evil, and who created that? Because the animals didn't do that themselves. They didn't make that decision. They're just acting on instinct, aren't they?
And it's not bad for them either. And Detective Inspector Monkfish, what is it? It's a misnomer. Okay, but it's correct, yeah. Okay, but the thing is, if I am going like livestock, I think what it's trying to be insulting. It's trying to be like, I'm just running around like a stupid cow. All I can do is eat grass. That's all I can do. And this is why they think it's insulting. Yeah. So I'm like a stupid cow because I don't want to believe that there is some supernatural, evil, narcissistic monster up there.
But also, there's inference there that enjoying yourselves is a bad thing. Yeah. But if you enjoy yourselves, and again, it's not clear what that means, right? Can you smile? Can you sing? Can you feel happy? That would fall under enjoyment for me. Is that a bad thing? Because the fire will be the residence for them if they enjoy themselves.
Exactly.
No. Presumably, a Muslim has said there's strict things about what it is that constitutes the type of enjoyment that might get you to hell. But other enjoyment you can have, but just not certain types. Or where does it say that? Doesn't say it here.
Have you seen the video I put up where this guy from, I can't remember whether it's Vietnam or China or somewhere, where he like dances along with his grandchildren? No, you haven't.
No, I don't think I have.
Because I put that up, and this to me is the cutest thing. How no, it's the great granddaughters, where the granddaughter teaches the grandfather some dance moves. I mean, like totally harmless, okay? But then they're out in the park, and now he's making these moves and he's slowly learning them. And then in the end, he can go with his great grandchildren and they will dance together out there somewhere. This is so cute. This is so nice. How can that be wrong? How can that be fucking wrong? I can't believe it. 47:8. But those who disbelieve me, for them is misery. I don't think so. And he will waste their deeds. What an arsehole. And among them are those who listen to you, but we have placed over their hearts coverings, lest they understand it. So because we understand that there is nonsense, we have been silenced by putting a cover over the hearts, and we have been deafened. And if they should see every sign, they will not believe in it. Even when they come to you arguing with you, those who disbelieve say, this is not but legends of the former people. Yeah, but that's what it is.
Yeah, of course. This is trying to inoculate themselves and the believers, right?
Against
With
any criticism.
answers. Yeah, trying to come up with answers so when people come to critique them, they can say, hang on a moment, but yeah, this was foretold that you were going to do this, and so we're just going to ignore you. You're just a bad person, right? So this is just like trying to vaccinate, the followers against people who will critique. But this whole thing with the heart, right? As we know, the heart pumps blood, etc. Why not use the brain? Because they have a word for that, right? So it's not as if why would Allah, right? Rather than they, I say they. Why would Allah keep using the word heart when in fact it's the brain that does the thinking and the rationale? The heart pumps blood, and to whatever degree the heart is quote unquote somehow emotionally intelligent, that's not the way you make decisions. Well, again, I would argue you wouldn't make decisions on emotion. I think you'd employ rationale. So what is it about keep using the word heart when presumably they have a word for brain, and the heart and brain are very different, right? At least that would be more accurate.
And one of the attributes of this God in Islam is he is the best of the deceivers. And here, this is deceptive because it says this is one God, it's oneness, but it's we, have placed over their hearts coverings lest they understand it. In other words, lest they understand means in case they understand it, we are stopping this. We have placed over their hearts coverings lest they understand it. So this deceptive monster is intentionally covering something so that we don't understand it. And in their ears deafness. So we are being stopped from understanding just because he needs some cannon fodder. He needs some stones with which to fuel the fire. And this is how deceptive this is.
And free will doesn't work here, right? Because here, if he is actively doing this, can you thwart the will of Allah? Obviously not.
No.
If he is doing this specifically with certain people to make examples of them, to scare off the rest from doing, from disbelieving, then those people obviously do not have free will, and they are essentially just robots, like you say, cannon fodder. So the free will argument here is completely gone. So not every human being, by this logic, not every human being has free will.
And this is intentional. It's intentional. It's not that this is me doing something. No, it says here it's intentional.
Yeah.
Indeed, the worst of living creatures and this is now the central description of a non-believer. The worst of living creatures are those who have disbelieved, and they will not believe. So I am the worst of any living creature. Now, who created me? This guy, Allah. So if this Allah, this thing that calls itself a God, goes and creates and then says, what I have just created is the worst of all living creatures. And Maverick loves and worships this God who says, I create things that are the worst of living creatures and they look just like you. They also have a brain. They can also debate you. They can also see. They can also smell. They can do everything that you can do. They can do more than you can do, but they are the worst of living creatures. But I created them like that. And Maverick goes and worships this God and says, Allah, you are the greatest, you are the best. Whatever you do is wonderful and beautiful. If you create people like that as the worst of living creatures, then this is wonderful what you have done. Congratulations, you are the best. Please.
Yeah, well, disbelieving is obviously problematic, right? Because if you don't have good reasons and evidence, you have to use threats, violence, emotional blackmail, etc. If you had good reasons and evidence, it would be self-evident. Anybody that was rational, and hopefully you and I are, we would be convinced. It would just be so, the arguments would be just so overwhelmingly strong. They'd be knockdown arguments. The probability of them being true would just be so high. The moral virtues would be of a level that would be stunning to all of us, even by today's standards. And because none of that's the case, you have to invoke, emotion and threats, etc.
Yeah, just to get fear. Fear me. How many times did we see this last time? Fear, fear, fear. Indeed, the worst of living creatures are those who are disbelieved, and they who disbelieved among the people of the scripture and the polytheists will be in the fire of hell, abiding eternally therein. Those are the worst creatures. So this little idiot doesn't even know what are the worst of creatures. Here it says polytheists, and here it says the worst of living creatures will those who have disbelieved. So make up your fucking mind. Which are the worst creatures? Is it these or these?
Well, you could lump them all together, non-Muslims, people that have heard the word and not accepted it.
And this is just a summary. So atheists, in other words, non-believers, are diseased, make mischief, Allah mocks them. This is the funny one. I mean, I didn't put this in here, but this is so funny how Allah creates the people. Then they don't believe. He knew this all along, but then he mocks them. Okay, we are worse than cattle. We've seen that. We are disobedient. We are the losers. We are convicts, sinners. We are blind and deaf and disgraces. Allah's curses on them. We are the wrongdoers. We are greedy. We are niggardly. Allah hates us. I mean, why does He create us if He hates us? Come on, people. Why don't Muslims see this? Allah hates us. Allah creates us and then hates us. It's like me creating a chair and then I hate the chair. So we are liars, we are hypocrites, we are treacherous, we are the lowest of the low, we are impure najis, we are pigs, we are obstinate, we are apes, dogs, evil, vilest of animals, unintelligent, perverse, despised, we are forsaken, arrogant, and divided, hard-hearted, ineffective, brought down, and we eat like beasts, we are donkeys, we are the worst of men. This is what Allah thinks of His own creation.
Well, only the bad parts of His own creation.
This is
it's
so
almost
funny.
like you're a carpenter and you fashion a chessboard and you only like the black pieces. The white pieces you don't like, right? They move first instead of following, some other rules or whatever the case is. And so then you want to burn those pieces, but you fashion them all yourself, right? And then you supposedly let them play the game, but you'd already worked out the game ahead of time, so the game could only run in a particular way. And then every time a piece gets taken off, you burn it. The black piece.
If we had 3 hours, we could go through all of these, because according to the Quran, a good person without the correct belief can go to hell and can get eternal punishment. So
I think we're right at the time now for.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go, and this is now. Please count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's all doom, fire, doom, hell, fire. 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 105 times. Those who disbelieve, they are those on the left hand, the dwellers of hell.
It's a good document to have, actually. Maybe I'll grab that from you at some point.
105 times. Can you believe
Yep.
it? I find it unbelievable.
This is just a contradiction. Rob, the Quran specifically says God only misguides those who want to be misguided and guides those who want to be guided. No, it doesn't. It says
That's
that
not.
he
We just
misguides
read
them.
it.
Exactly. You're talking nonsense. And that's a contradiction. If I want to misguide, I don't need God's help. I can misguide myself. So that's nonsense. If God misguides me, I am helpless to be guided, even if I wanted to be. So you've got to think before you write something down. You are just making contradictory statements.
Now,
This is what you
the other thing is what we need.
This book. Go on.
Sorry, what we need to acknowledge is that we only have from one source what the devil says, does, thinks. Now, in my eyes, there's something wrong with this, because actually it's the other way around. It's the devil who is telling us all this shit so that only the gullible go up and go somewhere else, and actually hell is a pool bar where you sit and all the interesting people are there and you can have interesting conversations while all the stupid, gullible people are just going around bonking. And this, I think, is the true picture that we need to consider, that it's Satan who is actually misleading everybody, thinking that they are good people. In actual fact, it's the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's my hypothesis. If this is true, if there is some sort of, creator or some sort of, powerful being out there, it's very likely Satan pretending to be a god. And in actual fact, if there is a test and there is some sort of punishment and some sort of reward, rather than only punishment, then you and I and people like us are likely to get the reward.
Exactly.
Maverick's claiming there is a verse that tells us, well, we've just read a verse that says the opposite. So the fact that the Quran contradicts itself is not a point in your favor. But by all means, bring it to Discord. We're going to go there in the next 5 minutes anyway. And then we'll bring you back this verse again. And then we'll show there's a contradiction, which you will deny. And the point will be done again.
And no, he does not speak Arabic. He does not speak ancient Arabic. None of the above.
That's the other thing, right? A Muslim will say, hey, but I'll bring a verse that contradicts what you're saying, but you've just read a verse from the Quran. So what they're really doing is shooting themselves in the foot to reveal that there's a contradiction in the Quran. But they, again, are not sort of paying attention to all they're doing is demonstrating through themselves that there's a contradiction. It's fascinating. But this is what happens to the human psyche, where you are forced to defend something that is indefensible because you claim that it has some. I'm more interested now in the psychology. It just shows me, how do people think that are forced to defend something that is really indefensible? What happens with the human brain in order for that to be the case? So you'll bring a verse that will contradict another verse in the Quran, and then you'll think you've made a point, not realizing that you've brought forth a contradiction which the Quran itself claims can't be the case, and you've therefore disproven the Quran through your own words. It's baffling.
And half the words in the Quran we use in Somali. So how come you are such a failure? How come you don't know Arabic? How come we have to teach you? We don't speak Arabic, but how come we can pull up a site which teaches Arabic, and we can pull up a site explaining the Arabic grammar, and we can show you using the page which teaches Arabic grammar that you are wrong? And then you come here and say, yeah, but we speak Arabic. We use a lot of Arabic. Well, then, why the fuck are you such a big failure? Why do you fail at every single thing that you do? Everything that you are telling us is wrong. And then we have to teach you Arabic because even we don't speak Arabic. We know better Arabic than you do. This is, for me, it's amazing. And he will still run around and say, yeah, he's refuted the inheritance because he says one word in there, refutes everything. Just because he retranslates one word, he doesn't understand that milk doesn't have milks, but there is a word that says milk and it doesn't have any more specification. Just because a kid can be one or several. He doesn't understand the concept. And then he says, yeah, well, I've refuted. No, you haven't. You've made a fool of yourself. That's all.
Yeah, it's an indefinite noun. It can refer to one or many. So,
Crazy. All
anyway.
right. Any other questions? Anything else? I've just, we've only just, look, what we're doing is we're skimming the surface, okay? As you can see, there is a lot that you can still investigate here. There's a lot that you can do here. So please give us a like, give us a lot of subscriptions, give us a lot of whatever. A lot of, show the love. Oh, I miss Kalam. Shit, it's such a pity that he stopped. Because he was so good at explaining things and so good at really bringing entertainment to the crowd. It's such a pity, really. No, God. But I can understand him. I'm more thick-skinned, so I can handle people like Maverick, Anyway.
Let's go over the Discord, shall we?
Anything else that we have here?
No, I think... Yeah, so just we're going to go over the Discord now. I'm sure TDS Dave will drop the link in. I can't do it on my phone at the moment. He's already there waiting for us all. So if you want to continue the conversation as we do on a Friday evening after the show, then please join us. We'd love to improve that, to grow that as well, and maybe even have daily people drop in. There it is. Thank you so much, TDS Dave. He's on every day. So again, if you want to join and have a chat to Dave, sometimes I'll pop in and have a chat to Dave. He's on most days at the moment. We're trying to grow that, or at least he's trying to do it for us, which we're hugely appreciative of. And if we could grow that and make that a server where people just hang out during the day, mostly it's Islam, but you can bring up other things as well, then that's the place to go.
Rob, you're starring in the next video.
Okay, well, I hope it's a good one. If I'm a piranha again, maybe you could make me a lion or an eagle or something. But okay, I'll accept a piranha if it need be. But thank you for that. Come and join us in Discord. Come and
what was I? I was a rat or something, wasn't I?
I can't remember. It's all good. All right, give us.
Allah's apostle said, fast, because remember we're still in Ramadan, okay? So we still need to take that into consideration. So Allah's apostle said fasting is a shield. So the person observing fasting should avoid sexual relation with his wife and should not behave foolishly and impudently. And if somebody fights with him or abuses him, he should tell him twice, I am fasting. The Prophet added, by him in whose hands my soul is, the smell coming out from the mouth of a fasting person is better in the sight of Allah than the smell of musk. He has left his food, drink, and desires for my sake. The fast is for me, so I will reward for it, and the reward of good deeds is multiplied 10 times. And I remember, didn't Maverick ask, where is the narcissistic? Here is one example of narcissism. The fast is for me. Me, capital M.
That's a hadith stop. That's forbidden.
Yeah. Well, we had this in the Quran just now. I mean, what is the purpose of human beings? Please tell us. Pray tell, what is the purpose of human beings?
There you go. Not the Quran.
Yeah. Not the Quran.
Right.
You don't care what Muhammad does. Okay. All right, people. Thank you very much. Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Rob. Hopefully Thunderous will be back next week. And hopefully Maverick is here to provide us with the entertainment that we deserve. Bring some more people, Maverick. Come on. It's funny to have people like you. So even if you're
invite more Muslims, especially to Discord. And we can talk about it on Discord as well.
You've got the link in there. Come and join us.
Yeah.
See you there.
TDS
See you next week. Thanks, Rob. See you next week.
Thank you, sir. Good night to everybody. See you next week.